Please watch the video until the end. Chapter 1, The Quiet That Clings. There are sounds the living never notice until they stop. The hum of the refrigerator, the small, polite creak of the stair at the top, the way rain taps like a tentative finger at the attic window. I had lived with those sounds so long that their absence should have been a relief. Instead, it was a pressure, like a hand laid flat on the back of my head. I remember the night in a handful of shards, the bright lane light, a moment's distraction, glass, and then that silence, clean and unargued. After that, there was only a seam of awareness that did not belong to my body. I awoke to white. At first I thought someone had wrapped me for a funeral. The sheet was heavy in the way of damp cloth. It sat across my face and eyes, but somehow I could see, if seeing is the right word, shape and light, as if the world filtered through a gauze. I rose, or I was moved. The house accepted me like an old argument and made room. The bed was empty beside me. The small marks on the wall where pictures had hung remained, and where the window caught moonlight the dust made slow halos. I moved through the rooms without a sound, though sound returned to me as a stranger. My mouth had the memory of words I could not place. In the kitchen, a faded cereal box still leaned on the counter, remembered by the air that could not forget it. Outside, a blue wind chime rattled, and I felt the shiver of it through the floorboards as if I were water. They came in the mornings at first, neighbors, a man who would say my name too loudly, not because he loved it but because he needed it to be true. He brought a woman with eyes like a winter sky. They opened the back door, looked at the house, and left polite comments about the roof. They did not see me standing in the hall, the sheeted shape leaning in a posture I used to call lazy. They had no idea the house had taken me as a tenant. Days blurred into a thin gray of human traffic, friends with casseroles, a lawyer with a briefcase, the woman who kept the lawn who planted and replanted the same stubborn daisies in a bed that never seemed to root. Grief comes at the living as a series of chores. To the dead, it is a landscape they finish their circle in. Chapter 2, Patterns of a Ghost. I learned the house the way a blind man learns a room by touch. I found the way the floor sloped near the fireplace. I learned the spot on the attic ladder where the varnish had been wiped to a shine by hands that carried crates for a dozen years. I learned the rhythm of the neighborhood, a cart at 7, a dog barking at 9, a teenage laugh that rose like wind through aluminum siding. I timed the footsteps on the path and marked their patterns. People moved through the rooms like drafts. Some cried, their faces pressed to the cold glass. Some rummaged for things to remember and took small things that smelled of us, a jacket, a record, a mug with a chip. Once a red scarf vanished from the banister, later it was found on a fence, braided into a knot with ribbon and a note card that said, "I'm sorry you had to go." I could not leave. I tried. When the door opened, I followed the current of air, tried to slip under the threshold, but the boundary resisted. The house had its own gravity. It kept me slotted against the lintel like a key in a lock. I pressed my presence against the wall and the paint did not mind. It kept its cool, a seal that said you're fine here. You were always part of us. The room accepted me like a stain. Time, when the living are not watching, moves differently. Minutes swell and flatten. I watched a sunbeam linger on the same banister spline for an afternoon like a fish hung in glass. Nights gathered as if to prove they could keep their weight forever. Sometimes I drifted into the corridors of other minds, snapshots, the woman with winter eyes pressing her palms to the stove in a way I recognized from old habits, a child, hair still soft, drawing a ribbon figure on the floor with chalk that left a pale blue crescent. They built their lives around the skeleton of what I was. I existed as a negative space in their new frames. Chapter 3, The Tender Theft of Time. Years began to stack, a shelf of moth-eaten days. The house hosted new names. A couple moved in who smelled of citrus and plans. They sanded the floors and left the old pencil marks for height on the doorframe. They filled the refrigerator with jars labeled in a patient hand. They loved the house in the way that remedies old wounds, by covering them with fresh paint. I watched them build a family, watched a child learn to crawl across boards I had once paced while thinking of futures. He took to the stairs' first step with the same careful testing I had used once. He left a footprint of jam on the back of a forgotten spoon. At night he slept in a blanket that had been my wife's, an old, soft thing that smelled of lavender and bath water. The smell wrapped his small head like a halo. The child would wake, sometimes screaming, and there was a shape at the doorway. I learned the science of small fears. Night lights got tripped. The couple would come to the bedroom and speak in soft, walking voices. They lit candles and read from books about constellations, trying to build a map of the sky inside the room. They never saw me in the corner staring at the page they turned flat. That was the cruelty of it. The living kept parents' rituals to carry their own children through the dark, and I could only see how they succeeded. Once, years in, the child, now grown, left a toy soldier under the couch and went to work in a city that hummed with other lives. The house felt like a breath held and released. New occupants brought new noise. A painter came for a short while, and the house was filled with the soft electric scent of turpentine. The painter found a corner to weep in and left a letter folded into a drawer that I learned to read like a prayer. I spent those days learning the cadence of private grief, the sort that places itself in envelopes and forgets to seal them. Chapter 4, The House Forgets. Houses can be memories and prisons both. There came a season when I noticed the wallpaper beginning to peel in places where the damp had found a way in, the roof side in a different register. The town shifted, roads rerouted, a supermarket with bright, dishonest lights opened where the community garden had been. People stopped passing the house as often. The house kept its breath but the streets changed lanes. A rumor spread that the house was haunted. Children dared one another to touch the porch rail. Whispered names were thrown at the mailboxes and returned like stones. The rumor made people look, and looking becomes an act that reshapes a thing. The house tightened, the hinges began to catch. New things came in then, a uniformed crew with clipboards, measuring tapes stretched like silver tongues. They spoke about permits and asbestos, about the value of old beams and the cost of keeping a building that remembers too much. I felt something else coming, the blunt, honest business of endings. They planned for demolition as if it were a kind mercy. The rooms were catalogued, photographed with the sterile pity of insurance men. A young woman with nervous hands took a picture of the hearth and smiled at the camera, and in the glass of the lens I saw, for a breath, all my years compressed into a single flicker. I moved toward that reflection and reached, the sheet snagged on the banister and tore. Chapter 5, What We Leave. When they started to take the walls down, the house opened like a chest. Light poured in that did not belong to the day, it smelled of orange dust and machine oil. Men in bright vests moved through the rooms as if they were harvesting a crop. There were loud machines that chewed and groaned. The sound of anything being undone is a particular grief. It is the knowledge of undoing. I stood in the doorway as a room collapsed inward and a memory fell with it. Photo frames crashed, the shape of the couch folded like a paper model left in rain. The living removed things carefully, reverently. There was a small tin box with letters, the kind people write when they think the world is steady and they can pin down their feelings with ink. The hand that pulled them out hesitated, then tucked them into a plastic bag. I wanted, fiercely, absurdly, to slip into that bag, to be carried around in some human pocket and read by hands that knew me. But the house had been more than wood and plaster. It had been an anchor point for years, and anchors don't drift when you want them to. Still, when the back wall gave and the sky slammed into the kitchen like a new thing, something inside me unlatched. The sheet, my absurd costume, caught on a nail and tore further, the white peeled in ribbons. With the house opening up, I felt the smallest fissure of permission to do what I had not been able to do since the white came down over me, move beyond the threshold. It was not a sudden freedom. It was a small stepping, like a breath after a long submersion. I left the frame of the house, walked down the porches of my life. The town smelled different, damp concrete, exhaust, the distant sea if the wind told the right lie. People walked past without seeing me. I was still thin with the past and broad with absence. Chapter 6, The Quiet Between Heartbeats. What is death but a change of address? I had been a man who kept lists, of groceries, of small favors owed, of things I promised myself to fix. Death did not erase those lists. It reoriented them. I learned that the world keeps on folding people into its shape, new houses, new lovers, playgrounds, parking lots, each an imperfect mortar between what was and what will be. I found, in my wandering, a small park bench under a tree that remembered me and the shadow it produced. A woman sat there, older now, her hands a map of veins. She had been one of those who had wept at the window the first week I wore the sheet. She looked up suddenly, and though her face could not name me, her eyes slid across that particular absence with a recognition that pricked like ice. She placed her palm on the bench where I had rested my elbow once, and spoke softly into the air, saying a sentence that was not addressed to me but landed like a coin. "You hold on to them," she said. "You keep them longer than is fair." Perhaps that is what we do. We occupy the negative spaces of other lives, keep them in a posture that the living can no longer maintain. Sometimes they notice, sometimes they do not. Sometimes they pass down a story that softens the edges. In the end, the house was taken down and the plot filled with something new, a building with windows that would not open, a structure half as warm as the one it replaced. Yet on certain afternoons, when sun slips through cloud like a slow apology, the city sinks for a moment, a banister's old shadow on the sidewalk, a faint smell of toast. People stop and look, thinking they have seen something in the corner of their eyes. For me, there is a strange relief in that. I am no longer fixed to a single stare. I am a motion made of memory, and memory is a longer thing than life. I linger not because I am trapped, but because to leave entirely would be to waste the shape of what was. If you have a house that holds you, if you have sheets folded in trunks, if you have letters with the edges softened by hands, care for them. Remember what you loved, and when the time comes, let the light in to finish the rooms. This is Thomas, saying what I can from one half-breath behind a door. My voice is not the clatter of the living, but it is honest in its hush. Do not be afraid of the quiet. It needs us to remember it more than we need it to frighten us. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share the video with others.